So the Spider-Man 2 trailer came out and it was incredible. Not in the sense of its artistry, but in the sense that it shows off a lot of the game. Maybe it shows off too much for my taste, but that's an entirely different thing. The trailer is good because it makes every part of the game look good. Except for, of course, the story. Now you guys have to realize where you're at. I'm apparently one of the only dudes who cares about writing, and these stories are actually mediocre. But also the fact that almost every YouTuber will tell you that these stories are some of the best Spider-Man stories when they just aren't. I've already made videos talking about the other games and their stories, but if I had to sum it up, I would say that the stories are generic. A lot of the praise for these games is that the writers know Spider-Man, but really it feels like these stories are a generic ensemble of previous iterations of Spider-Man that come together to create this safe Spider-Man with no depth.
Now I'm seeing an assault near you.
You're in luck, Yuri. Your favorite tough but lovable, grizzled, seen-too-much detective is in town.
What? No. You promised you wouldn't do that
Spider.
And as a result, this trailer shows off this no charisma ass Spider-Man.
Craven wants a hunt? I'll give him one he'll never forget!
But guys, despite all of this, this game looks like it could be the best Spider-Man game on the GS5. And overall the second best Spider-Man game, because it's not going to be better than Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is not only the best Spider-Man game, but it's especially relevant because it does almost everything better than Spider-Man PS4. So let's quickly just compare the two games to show you guys what I'm talking about. Arguably the best part of Spider-Man PS4 is its combat. It's very intense, you have a lot of options, you have to be very mobile, but a big problem with the combat is the enemy design. Spider-Man PS4 throws so many of the same situations at you, even across different factions, that it becomes insanely repetitive. Now, Shattered Dimensions also has the same enemy types across factions, but they're also very unique factions. The level design is also smart enough to vary the enemy encounters and keep them fresh. Sometimes the factions even fight each other, which adds another level of depth to the combat. But possibly the biggest problem with Spider-Man PS4's combat is how unsatisfying it is. To start, Spider-Man's moveset is quite literally only kicks, which might not sound like a problem because everyone knows that kicks generate more power than punches, except for Insomniac games. It's a combination of the damage, the sound effects, the impact that pretty much shows that Spider-Man is throwing goddamn slap kicks. Compare this to Shattered Dimensions, where yeah, you don't just kill enemies in one hit, but you can actually feel the impact because of the visual feedback and sound effects. Also, instead of the entire combat system being based off webbing people up, this combat system focuses on combinations and just absolutely destroying your enemies. The level design in Spider-Man PS4 is also a big weakness. The game just throws the same combat encounters at you and the same garbage ass stealth sections. Sometimes there's a cool chase and the boss fights are a little bit too automated most of the time. And the visual variety is actually horrendous. Throughout the entire 30-hour game, all of the levels are either inside buildings or outside buildings. Like, bro, compare this to Shattered Dimensions. Just in the first act, you go through this jungle temple, hydro power plant, a Neuer train station. The game not only keeps the enemy design fresh, but it isn't afraid to experiment. Like, look at this. This is one of the only second-person sequences in gaming, and it works. But let's compare the stories now. Let's get this straight, guys. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is not only my favorite Spider-Man game of all time, but it's one of my favorite games, period. And I've seen some dudes say that this story is better than the Spider-Man PS4, but I think it's not a fair comparison. Shattered Dimensions is very stylized and comic-like, but the narrative isn't really the focus of the game. Spider-Man PS4 actually takes itself realistically and puts a huge focus on the narrative. And look, man, it is a mediocre story, but mediocre does not mean bad. There are some good elements in here. But because the writing is so generic and safe, it honestly makes the story less enjoyable. Because honestly, it would have been better if it was something you could laugh at, but you just can't.
So, why'd you call? Need a date to the policeman's ball?
You got a black and white suit?
But guys, Spider-Man 2 is not going to be a re-release of Spider-Man PS4. So let's analyze this trailer. So the first thing this trailer shows is the fact that they actually chose Craven as the main villain. So the thing about Craven is that he's one of the goofiest villains ever and almost certainly could never work in a serious story. So naturally, Insomniac makes him the most serious character, and one of his minions deadass shows him a video of Spider-Man in New York, so they invade with helicopters. Which is just, wow, incredible story. I love Spider-Man. It's a great story. Compare this to Shattered Dimensions, which fully embraces its tone. Of course Kraven was going to work. He's incredible in that game. Not only is he characterized well throughout the level, which is such a good part of Shattered Dimensions, but his voice actor does a great job.
My disciples, they've come to study at the foot of the master, to learn the art of the hunt from the greatest hunter of all.
And the most modest.
You dare mock me in front of my students.
But guys, even though this new Kraven is taken very seriously, he still has potential to be enjoyable. While his dialogue and character is taken super seriously, his actions are undoubtedly goofy. Despite all the negatives, I could see myself having fun with this character in an unintentional way. So now let's talk about the no charisma ass Spider-Man in the black suit. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like Sam Raimi, the Evil Dead guy, pretty much just made Spider-Man an asshole, right? Flipping his morals. But this no charisma Spider-Man isn't just mean, he's a goddamn cannibal creature.
You sure? He's got big teeth.
So do I.
But guys, again, this is very goofy and it seems enjoyable. Like, yeah, I'm laughing at it, but at least I'm laughing. The only thing that sometimes gets to me are the fans who think these games are peak superhero storytelling. And like, already these dudes are praising the most basic, obvious things ever. And speaking of these Spider-Man fans, Miles Morales is looking to be the main protagonist of this game. And while there are some genius Spider-Man fans saying that they prefer this Miles to the goddamn Spiderverse Miles, they want Peter to absolutely molest Miles. This whole Peter versus Miles thing is actually pretty refreshing, you know, entertaining and just like not boring, so I'm all for it. And fans seem to have this WrestleMania-ass lust for Peter to not lose to Miles, which is why I want Miles to absolutely fry Peter with this goddamn electricity. And then Lizard is the only time Spider-Man PS4 universe will have the best version of a character. Now, the competition was pretty much nothing, but this is also the first time Lizard has been interesting. I'm assuming he's not going to be some goof-ass scientist like, guys, we need to evolve into lizards, and instead just be some guy who tried to restore his arm and went crazy. This design actually looks threatening, so good job. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the Kraven faction, which I'm sure Insomniac is just going to recycle the enemy classes, but whatever. The thing that stood out to me was the dogs. Like, that looks fresh and neat. I honestly like the enemy faction's design of just being green military instead of just some cringy ass, lame ass samurais or advanced soldiers or like Tron ass tech gurus. I like the simplicity is what I'm saying. So now let's talk about the combat. Miles Morales made good strides into making the combat feel more satisfying with actual punches in the combos and venom strikes. It was actually kind of satisfying to beat people up in that game. Unfortunately, the trailer shows that Miles is just kind of shooting electricity like a goddamn Sith Lord, which is actually lame. I really preferred striking with electricity instead of just like unlimited power, but you know. Peter though, now has the Venom suit. So instead of just slap kicking, he's going to be slapping with big ass juicy tentacles, which is like what you're supposed to do. Also, the sound effects sound more satisfying, which you guys should know goes a long way. But yeah, the combat might actually be good. The movement seems to be a lot faster. I personally thought the swinging in the previous game was neat, but it's something that I wouldn't really focus on. I honestly prefer the Fortnite Spider-Man swinging where you actually have to aim your webs. But thankfully, Insomniac is taking inspiration from Fortnite by putting wind tunnels in the game. Now I gotta be honest, the level design is a bit iffy. I did not like the stealth section they showed with Miles. I thought it was really boring and it reminded me of the other two games. The cinematic stuff was cool and it's really hard to be bored when playing these big cinematic spectacles, but I think they can overdo the automation like with this part where Miles is literally just sliding in the water. Honestly, watching Miles swing in the exact same open world we had like 3 times now kind of made me question if I really wanted to spend $70 on this game. I really don't know why they can't just try having a different city or something. Also, Yankee reminded me of how boring these stories can get. But ultimately, guys, I do feel half satisfied with the direction that Insomniac is taking with this franchise. On one hand, I feel like I've already played this game twice, but on the other, the changes do look cool. And the story looks way more entertaining than anything before it. But yeah, that's how I'm feeling. You guys let me know how you're feeling. I'll see you in the next video, and I wish the best of luck to Insomniac with Spider-Man 2. Bye, guys.